This broadcast is inappropriate for all ages right here on hashtag WeAreMovieClub. Salutations, I am Camera and I am conversation ready. Sure I am. Whatever. I'm gonna be a little today because always like a million degrees in here. Back hurts like crazy. So I'm making myself do this so it's done. Because we need to talk about Iron Man 2. It's gotta happen. I'm not a big Iron Man fan. Let's start there. I'm gonna keep eating gummy bears even though I shouldn't. Oh, Weeblock, why'd you give these to me? Horrible producer. Should find one with thumbs. Okay. Regardless though, not a big fan of Iron Man. Tony Stark's an asshole, no matter what the incarnation of him is. But out of the three movies, I tend to like the parts of Iron Man that other people don't. Like, the suits are cool. We agree on that. I don't like Tony, where a lot of people like Tony because they want to be Tony, because they want to be rich and powerful and smart, and they want to be able to drink as much as they can, do as many drugs as they can, sleep with as many women as they can. Even though these are actually, like, fatal flaws of Tony. Like, some people don't get that. They just see their fantasy, like, in front of them. And they're like, oh, I want these parts of it. And it's like, no, you don't see the rest of it. And the movies really don't highlight that because they want, like, this super happy picture in your head. Because they want you to relate to the characters. Iron Man isn't a hero. Like, he doesn't even superhero in the first one. He enters a war zone. He goes and kills people. And then he comes back to the States and ends up killing Obadiah. Now, granted, Obadiah tried to kill him first, but... And in this one, it's really him versus Hammer, and then Ivan, and Ivan. So Ivan tries to come over to the States and kill Tony. The Senate and Hammer try to, like, take away Tony's technology, which just, it seems like a bad idea. Like, it doesn't seem like it would work properly. And quite honestly, it's amazing that Rhodes doesn't, like, break himself in half when he puts the suit on. Now, granted, that's supposed to be a testament to how good Tony's technology is. Well, suits weren't really made for anyone else. If Rhodes was a couple pounds heavier, it probably wouldn't have fit on him physically, let alone, like, actually react to him. You could probably even argue that Tony set up part of the software to recognize Rhodes specifically. And I'm not spoiling anything. It's right there on the poster that, like, Iron Man and War Machine, and this is Rhodes. So I'm not spoiling anything there yet. While we're still talking about it in concept. But Ivan Drago, or Danko, I think is actually what it is. It's the biggest thing with him is that I'm surprised he left his bird behind to come kill Tony. Like, it seemed like a very important part of his life. The fact that he was going to try to send Hammer back to get his bird, his Boyd. I want my bird, my Boyd. It's a Russian accent. It'll get you, and he is very different Russian accent than what I'm doing here. But Boyd. I want my Boyd. Yeah. So, I'm trying to think, like, who he actually fights here. He defends himself against Ivan. He fights some droids. Again, like, not a terrible amount of superheroing, because he's just defending himself. Yeah. Really, like... I don't know what the drones and stuff would have done if Iron Man hadn't shown up at the expo. Maybe he would have started killing people, and then he would have been able to superhero. But because of the situation, he wasn't able to superhero. I think it's a very important fact. I don't know. Anyways. But I like the suitcase suit. I really like, that's probably my favorite part of this movie. It feels a little wasted, but I don't know. So we open with, like, the lengthy Marvel logos and stuff. I'm just going to start walking through this because I don't know what I want to talk about here because it's Iron Man. Um, weird, shitty month of movies. Red State's next week. I'm looking forward to that one at least. So, fucking Marvel and their crazy ass logos. We have voiceover from the first movie, kind of catching us back up, and then we reopen in Russia, and it's Ivan's dad dying from palladium poisoning. Oh, and the fucked up thing is that Fury knew about him. I don't know if he knew that he was dying, but he eventually figured out that he died from the palladium poisoning, that they had been working on stuff. Given that it's Russia's the big damn place, who knows? But there's a chance that Fury had that intel, even if S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't. And didn't prevent the death. Didn't, like, go and be like, hey, you're suffering from this stuff, whatever. And it makes me wonder, though, if the original, maybe this is it, that the original arc reactor is part of, was built by Danko and whatnot, like, and they mentioned something like that when they start going over stuff, but that's all boring shit. It's hard to focus on. So maybe it's not like so much that they work together, it's maybe Danko really made it himself, and that's why he's getting the palladium poisoning or whatever, because he probably didn't have it in his body. I can't imagine why that's the case. But that makes it even more curious why Tony was able to replicate a miniature one on his own in a cave with spare parts. I'm not going to yell it like Obadiah does, because I can't quite deliver it like that. So, yeah, so we're going to skip around on this a little bit. The Stark Expo, like they said, it goes all year long. No idea what the fuck that means. If he actually has a year-long event for himself. Fuck Tony Stark. Tony Stank indeed. I can go on for hours. So I'm going to decline to do so. But, yeah, so, of course, he ends up hitting on Jessica Biel or somebody, and she ends up serving him papers to appear at the Senate Supreme Court or whatever. And of course, it's just a couple senators. It's very blatantly rigged. And if Tony didn't do X, Y, and Z, like, that would have been the end of Iron Man. And I don't know why Hydra had so much stake in that, but that's definitely what would happen. But I mean, having like choice members on that committee like that, take it or leave it, that could be normal. But as like Rhodes was saying, like for him to read specific parts of the thing to help the case of the Senate versus Tony and not allow him to speak further, that's unconstitutional. You can't make you like that illusion of power. There is not truth. You are held by the bureaucracy both ways, for you and against you. But it's everyone else's job to call you on your bullshit when you do it. So when he states that he should be allowed to do that, that should have been the moment where somebody there, even if it was someone assigned to the committee to keep it honest, should have been like, this is it. Or the lawyers, like, where were the lawyers at this hearing thing? Like, I get Tony might not show up, but there would at least be a JAG lawyer there to help do that. And as soon as Rhodes, a military personnel, being badgered by this executive branch, like, it's the whole thing's implausible once you start looking at it. I'm doing kind of a cinema sense thing here, except it's not funny, and I recognize that. Sometimes my brain just goes, and it was all enjoyable to me. Life doesn't have to be funny every second of the mummy, yeah. And I'm sure you weren't laughing during that. I'm just gonna keep eating these, even though it smacks on the microphone, and I'm an idiot. So long story short, Tony makes an ass out of Hammer. I think Rhodes catches a little bit of flack, and he makes an ass out of the senator and his whole committee. Commandeering the screens was a nice touch. The fact that Hammer couldn't figure out how to unplug the goddamn TV for so long was amazing. Total testament to his character. Actor really nailed it. So after that, back at Tony's, it shows the poison affecting him for the first time. He's doing stuff that annoys Pepper because he's badly dealing with the idea that he's going to die. So he's trying to wrap up all of these loose ends that he has going on, and she's not read in. She doesn't know. She doesn't care, or because she doesn't know. Not that she doesn't care. And like he kept Rhodes out of the loop too. So Rhodes finds out later, and Rhodes isn't a scientist, but he's smart enough to figure out like, oh, this smoking chip thing in you is bad. So I like that nice little moment. I like the family that builds around him as he destroys himself. Speaking of that, as the family grows, it was kind of cool to see the very first appearance of Natasha Romanoff, Scarlett Johansson. I'm a fan. See her watch her own happy in the ring. Now, granted, he thinks everyone's boxes. But she flipped him around like he was in professional wrestling and put through an armbar on him. And then she kind of you could see her in the acting, like she has a moment where she snaps out of it and she just climbs out of the ring. So, I don't know. I don't know why you're in that condition. You're like, let's box. But obviously he wasn't doing well. He's got like that kale drink thing there to help slow down the palladium poisoning or whatever it is. Okay, then there's like the country club restaurant thing where like Hammer's there. There's all these reporters. There's every other rich asshole that you can think of there. Like Elon Musk is there apparently, and he's going so out of his mind that he goes outside the place over to the local racetrack, I guess. Which is weird because it's like a European style thing. Those cars that's like a French stock car, if I'm remembering correctly. I have to hit up my friend Charlie. He would know far better than I. So he goes out and he starts racing, and he's not a racer, so he's probably going to kill himself, which is the reaction everyone else has, because that's the reaction you should have. But if he has a chance to go out in a blaze of glory, why not? Because I guess at this point, like, he's bored as Iron Man, because that's why he's doing it, because it's exciting. It has nothing to do with actually helping people. He does it for the adrenaline high and the adoration. He's such a dick. I just can't get behind him, no matter what he does. But what's cool is that Ivan shows up, and he's got, like, this, like, skeletal system thing on, hooked up to the arc reactor with these, I'm just going to call them ionic whips. And then he ends up ripping his car in half, or a car in half or something. Yeah, I think it's the one Tony's in. And then eventually, and there's a lot of like funny built into it, but Happy hits him with the car, and they eventually get Tony this suitcase suit, which is awesome. Because he kind of like opens it with his foot, or he sets the code and then drops it and like steps on it, and then it like latches onto his foot and then starts dressing him like a disease spreading across his body. And then it locks it all down, because the first one, if you remember, the Mark... It's either Mark 2 or 3. It depends if you count. Most scientists use 0 when counting the first. So 1 is actually the second. It's called base 0 counting, or index 0 counting, whatever you want to call it. So Mark 0 would have been the original suit in the cave in the movies franchise, anyways. Mark 1 would have been the silver suit that Rhodes later steals, and then the first suit that we see that's yellow and red, hot rod red. That would be the Mark 3 then. Mark 2, sorry. So that suit, like, it screwed onto him. Like, he had to fight to get it off of him at the end of the movie, which was amazing that he was able to do that at all. So this one, like, being such a lighter suit, just crawling over him to, like, sink down is cool. I really think that's a neat way to do it. It's kind of like the idea of Alfred just carrying a bat suit around in a briefcase for Bruce Wayne, because that's what would have happened in those comics, versus like having to drive and send the car or whatever he used to do that had the suit in it. Because I don't know what Bruce Wayne was doing half the time, but like this is cool because it's not a suit that you wear under, because it's a suit that goes over. So there's a bunch of different options. And I don't know what you do with the suit you're wearing, like normally with Iron Man either. Does the suit just go over your clothes, or are you supposed to strip down to like a minimum layer? Who knows? So like it would be kind of funny to like see like every time Tony had to suit up as Iron Man, he had to get naked in public first, then go for whatever stupid thing he was doing in the third movie. I still like that. The deployable is such a great idea, which is where it remotes to him, versus the suitcase, which is a little problematic. Which, especially if Pepper or Happy have to carry it around, because then they have to go towards him, towards the danger to get it to him. Okay, so again, kind of long story short, Tony and Ivan tiff off. Like Tony, arrogant bastard, gives him advice on how to kill him better. Ivan goes to prison. Ivan gets broken out of prison. He goes to Hammer Industries. Hammer gets him a Boyd, not his Boyd. But they did have a nice romantic dinner. I do want to point that out, that the relationship started well. Hammer tried to treat him right in the beginning of the relationship, even though they started having issues and problems, especially in communication. Coming from two different countries, speaking different languages, there are barriers. There's a marriage is work. I'm just saying. Oh my god, I gotta start my SoundCloud nonsense again. Where are we at? Yeah, so Hammer wants him to make suits to compete with the Iron Man thing, because that's how stupid capitalists think, is like, there's a product out there, there's the demand, I'm going to make another product to compete with that one, and people will want to buy it too, just like they want to buy theirs. And like, no, they already have that, and it's not how it works. So, and you can't make a good enough product. So, like, he's trying to get Ivan to help him with that, but Ivan comes up with the idea of drones, of course, which I actually agree with. I think that works a lot better. Now, granted, they should have been able to test fly him a little better. There were some of those situations where it's like, why did it hit that? It should have just stopped. But, as we see in real life with the self-driving cars, there are issues that happen in the real world, and it's all preventable. It's just a matter of doing enough testing in enough different conditions, and reality has near infinite conditions. So Tony ends up having I'm a dying party, and then Rhodes comes in to help rein him in or whatever. And I think he was trying, he went there with the purpose of stealing Tony's suits from him. So he's a dick too. So he ends up putting one on somehow. Jarvis lets him do this, by the way. I don't know how that works out. And Tony ends up letting him fly away with the suit that Rhodes obviously does not know how to fly. Let's be very clear on that, unless they've gone out flying a couple times, but unlikely, I think, at this point. And they end up doing this double shot with the flight stabilizers in the hands. So the energy builds on itself and creates a large combustion that ends up taking out the floor, knocking Tony on his ass, and then Rhodes, long enough for Rhodes to leave, anyways. So, of course, what anyone does the night after a party like that, Tony gets back in his Iron Man suit, flies to a donut shop, and eats donuts on top of the building. And then has an impromptu meeting with Fury. S.H.I.E.L.D. Maria Hill. Actually, I don't know if she was there or not, but Natasha Romanoff was, so like we start learning about the whole double agent nonsense. And And that's what SHIELD does in this universe. They are a intelligence agency. They're not warriors. They're not soldiers. Romanoff is about as close as they come, and she's still not a soldier. She's a spy who happens to have enough combat skills. It's just what it is. Even Clint's not like that. He can still fight, but he's not. He's not going to take on Captain America. Chitauri. So Shield ends up curing his palladium poisoning, or they slow it down at least enough with like a compound of some kind. Until, man, I'm just realizing Pepper's like barely any of these notes. It's such a small thing. When she's taking over the company, that's a huge part of the story that she's going and doing behind the scenes that we get very little insight into. But of course, especially with everything going on, Fury puts Tony on house arrest, gives him some materials from his dad to review, and then combining that with him escaping to go talk to Pepper, and then grabbing the layout of Stark Industries or whatever, which could have been changed so many times in those 30, 40 years or whatever it was. He uses the holographic projections to find the design for a new atom. What? That just baffling. And of course, because you can theorize new atoms, it's not. There's some math that you have to do for it, but it's not that complicated a look from our perspective. It's either going to have electrons or positrons. It's either going to have protons or negatrons. It'll have some amount of protons to help balance everything, because despite what you think, a proton isn't just even proton-electron mix. There's a imbalance there of some kind. So you need X amount of protons proportionally to the number of... X amount of neutrons proportionally to the number of protons and electrons that are in the mix to keep everything infinitely balanced. They say that there's no such thing as perpetual energy, but there is such thing as a perpetual system, which is what atoms are when they're stable. Now, if they start dissipating electrons or whatnot, then they become isotopes, or God forbid, protons or positrons. They can do that. So as they start losing all that, then they actually change elements. So the idea that you go to element number 147 and go, hey, I'm just going to make you now, using laser beams, is really odd. Plus, it needs to be sustained. So I think, in theory, in order for it to not radially leak, or maybe that's what the arc reactor does, is that it absorbs that radiation and then changes that into energy. Usable energy like electricity. That would actually make a lot of sense. Though I have no idea if that's true in the comics or if they thought about that at all in the movie. They were just like, new element, I'm awesome, let's go fly a kite. I'll be the kite. So yeah, so meanwhile, while Tony's just inventing new elements left and right, Rhodes ends up using Hammer to weaponize the Iron Man suit that he stole and to become the War Machine suit. And I don't know, like, I think in the comics Tony maintains the suit, but I think the context of War Machine was a lot different in the comics too. I think it was, hey buddy, why don't you help me out with this? Or we could really use a War Machine on the West Coast. How about this job? Something like that. Because War Machine was part of the West Coast Avengers. Iron Man was part of the East Coast Avengers. Regardless of whether or not he was in Silicon Valley when like all this started. Actually, I don't know if Silicon Valley existed when Iron Man first was started. I'm pretty sure he's a New York guy. So for whatever reason, like Wonder Man and War Machine and a couple other guys were the West Coast Avengers, and no one really gave a shit because that's Hollywood and stuff. Whereas the New York guys definitely got the majority of the problems. Like, because there's a lot more people and bad stuff going on in New York generally, or in DC, because yeah, the X-Men are located in upstate New York. Fantastic Four are located in New York. Stark Towers, or Stark Tower. There's a couple other things. They're a little fuzzy right this second, but let's see. Let's go. Fuck, are we at? Oh yeah. So Hammer gets cranky at Ivan for making drones, and puts him on house arrest. Like that's gonna work. He of course easily kills the guards that he left. He gets the bird back, and he starts hacking into the drones and the War Machine suit because Hammer put his garbage software in all of it. So he starts fighting at the Hammer Industries show or whatever, where the expo where he's supposed to demonstrate how all this works. Ivan obviously overrides everything and attacks Tony when he shows up because he's talking about evacuating the building. And of course Rhodes can't control himself, so he's just sitting in the suit while it flies around and shoots at Tony. Which seems to be a very common problem, that it can be used as a coffin, basically. And between that and Age of Ultron, what was it? Oh, I guess it was Civil War. Tony Stank. I can't imagine Rhodes ever wants to get in one of those fucking things again. I think it's going to come down to that, or he's going to have to be in it, and then that'll give us a weird version of DC's Cyborg. Because Tony already stated it is a prosthetic technically. Let's see. Romanoff goes and saves the day by I don't know if she chases off Ivan or it's just the timing works out, but she ends up overriding the protocols somehow because Romanoff knows all. And then Ivan gets in his little Iron Man suit that still has the whips attached to it. Not sure if that's like the best way to go. Like, he brought whips to a gunfight. Whatever. And it was so funny because we were in the chat. We were over at Rabbit/Camerai watching this past Sunday. And like the conversation in the chat quickly became, this guy has a suit? And pretty much by the time I was done explaining, like, he doesn't have it for very long. There's a couple other things that are happening here, and they talk about specifically about the whips, upgrading the whips, and the whips really draw your eye away from the details of this suit because the suit's very cool looking. It pretty much is an Iron Man suit with some like kind of like punk rock, heavy metal variations to it. I really liked it. But of course, they do their hand-holdy, blasty blast thing, and he literally is holding one this way, with his little whips, not doing anything to them. He looks at that one, and 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 then he blows up because he didn't do anything for 5 minutes. Or maybe a full minute. Like, let's be real. Like, it was a long amount of time to be in a fight and not move. Now, granted, if he's trying to hold on to them and they're trying to get away while they're doing this, especially once they started doing it, then, because they are repulsors, so that would have pushed them backwards against and pulled his whips taut. So there's that. Then, of course, everyone evacuated except for Pepper, who decided to stand right there in the midst of the robot graveyard from all the drone parts. So, of course, that means that when Ivan gives up, he goes Predator and, like, sets off everything to explode. She's in the middle of, like, 4 bombs. So, naturally, Tony does what Tony does. He swoops in, he picks her up at the last second. He flies away from this explosion. And he takes her to a roof and makes out with her in front of his best friend. I'm not saying that he was going for the threesome. I'm just saying it's a little suspicious that, like, he wanted that kind of audience for that kind of activity. I'm looking at my notes, and they kind of end right there, like before he even leaves. Like, because Ivan shows up in a new suit with only whips. He manages to hang with them both, because he does fight him for a little bit. He's able to like whip War Machine's thing away. But I'm thinking like I didn't save the last section notes, which is fine. There's nothing really to say about it. The thing that Marvel gets knocked on the most is for having the mirror effect. The mirror effect is when the hero ends up fighting someone who's just like him, Captain America, Red Skull. Technically, Iron Man and War Machine are kind of the mirror, but it's Iron Man versus the Iron Giant or whatever in the first movie, and then it's mini arc reactor versus mini arc reactor in this. And towards the end, Ivan definitely does look more like Iron Man. So now it's the mirror situation with a buddy. And in the third movie, we're not there yet. We're going to do that next week. It's not a mirror problem, but they do waste the Mandarin. We're going to talk about that more then, because those are just my opinions. But I like the Iron Legion type stuff. I think it's cool. And I really like the drones in this, too. I thought Ivan had a really good plan. He just had bad motivations. Because he was taking an unproven product against a superior foe, and then he got hit, or he got taken out because he didn't know a thing about his enemy, or his enemies, I guess was the point of it. And he just didn't make good decisions in the interim. So there were tactical ways, but I think Ivan's dead. Like, I think he died in that, so I don't think he's coming back. We don't have to worry about him. There's no ambiguity, like, with Red Skull. Because I still think Red Skull's coming back. Actually, for Red Skull to come back as a general of Thanos would actually be pretty cool. Like, if they're going to fuck up the movie universe, they might as well give us that. Oh, good lord, I've been talking about this for a while. So I'm going to go ahead and let go. Like I said, go over to Rabbit/Camerai and join us Friday nights and Sunday nights. Watch a movie, have a chat. It's a good time. Let the good times roll. We do Bad Movie Club and Scary Movie Squad in addition to this right now. Scary Movie Squad being on Friday. Which we're doing Predators, and we did Vulgar last week, and we're doing Red State on this Sunday, so come by for that, 7 p.m. Eastern Sunday. 1900. Alright, I'm gonna go. I just like to draw that out for some reason. It's more fun when we have another person to talk to. So until I see you next time, have a nice day from all us here on #WeAreMovieClub. If you want to see anything else we're up to, go to click the annotations, and they'll take you to our other channels. Thanks for watching.